Hi, I'm David Crane.
And this is Ernesto Verdugo.
And on tonight's Toilet Paper Diaries, we'll be sharing with you how Michael Jackson can help you to revamp your old content. Also, we're sharing why you should never mess with a TikTok generation. And most of all, how Elon Musk is using pigs to fix people. You want these answers? That and more coming up in this episode of the Toilet Paper Diaries.
Hey Dave, it's great to be once again this Wednesday. We're doing episode 69 of the Toilet Paper Diaries.
That's 69, a meal for two, but not for you and me, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. And should we cover some naughty parts on this show, or shall we just ignore that it's 69 and keep on with more crazy stuff?
I think we should let it all hang out. But I also think that later on, when we're sharing all these different insights of people, if by accident anything is a little bit rude or a little bit shocking, it's just going to happen. When you get people together of a certain age, they're just going to have fun. Even though it's distanced and it's social and neither of us are interested, it's going to go down a weird, but let's just not talk about that. Let's talk about the amazing stuff we got on the show before I try and find an angle, which I can't find, on why it should be really not creepy and just really cool. We've got some amazing stuff in today's show, by the way. I'm really excited about it. I mean, in a few moments' time, we'll be sharing the top 10 inventions that came out of a lockdown, which should make everybody's lives better. What else have we got on the show, Ernesto?
Today, we're going to be covering also, I think, an interesting topic, which is nationalism and patriotism, because I think there's a big difference that we need to be talking about. We're going to be talking about also specifically for speakers, what is a signature show? Right now, in this day and age, every speaker needs to have a signature show. We're going to be talking everything about that. We're going to be also explaining to you why you should never be messing around with the TikTok generation. And we have seen some really crazy examples. So you are going to find this very interesting. And I think it's great if we will get started with the first or the top 10 ideas or inventions of what has happened in the during the lockdown. What do you think?
I think you're right. So let's look at it. Since we've been in lockdown, we used to say how many days we've been in lockdown. The last time I checked on it, it was 166 days, and that was this time last week. So add that together, that's 173 days we've been in lockdown. I would guess we're heading towards a half a year period, and I don't care anymore. It should be, oh my goodness, but...
Let me just tell you, it's 7 months.
No.
Yes, it's 7 months.
I wonder how many people are heavily pregnant now in lockdown who, when they first went in, went, you know what, I'm bored of Netflix. Let's just, 69, well, not 69, that's not how it happens, but let's just get it on. And now they're walking around going, it's going to drop at any time. It's due in another 2 months. We thought we'd be out of lockdown. It's not funny anymore. I can't go up and down the stairs. So that's a lot of people, I'm sure. But a lot of people will be having relationships long distance. We'll be talking about that in this segment. So let's look at the fact that when people go into lockdown, we expected it to be a much shorter period of time. We expected to find everything that we had in a world before being just as important in the world after. But it wasn't the case. And so many things were important to us that we just couldn't get our hands on. Like, for instance, masks and personal protective equipment. Remember when we couldn't find it anywhere and people said, what is it? And you say, well, you've got to wear a mask. What's a mask? Well, it's one of these. And you go, well, this smells funny. I mean, do you put it on that side, the blue side, or the white side? And where do you put it? And then you go, I can't breathe. And then later on, it was revealed that that's what you have to do. And it hasn't stopped, but that has evolved.
For this and more, we are going to be having our new section, 10 great inventions that happened during the pandemic.
Easy! Easy!
So let's start there, Ernesto. Do you want to take the first one or shall I?
Go ahead. Let's get started with number 10.
Number 10 is ear guards. Now, the thing is, you may already be aware of wearing a mask. If you haven't worn a mask in the last 6 months, it's because you've been in a box or it's because you have no friends and you've not left the house for some reason. But anyway, when you get your ear masks, they are kind of uncomfortable anyway. Now, it's different if you're a surgeon because you know you're getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to wear it, hopefully, when you're doing operations. So you put your mask on and you're trying to talk and but the thing is, I've got this. Oh, it's massive. The thing is, this bit hurts after a while. And if you buy one that's not like this, a one-shot mask, and you get one that you can wear on a regular basis, they have adjusters on the side here. And the adjusters are a problem because after you've worn them for maybe a couple of hours when you're shopping, it really digs into your ear. Like the first time you got your ear pierced, many, many years ago. I don't have it now because my daughter pulled on my ears and it hurt too much. So now our first invention, which we're really proud of, we didn't create it, we just think it's really good, is an ear guard. And what that is, imagine having a mask at the front and a mask at the back, and it's got buttons on it. So when your mask goes all the way around, you can slot it onto the buttons so there's less pressure on your ears. So when you finally take it off, you haven't got this horrible groove like you've slept in the car because you were drunk the night before. Instead, you've got two tram lines like you've been hanging around with Hannibal Lecter and he was just sharpening up on you, which is much better, I think.
That is great. And now coming up with number 9, the listening archive. And I think this one is kind of sweet because it's like everybody contributes kind of podcast where everybody can share their different stories, their different support stories, sad stories, happy stories of every single thing that they have lived in these 7 months inside the pandemic. And I think this is something that is going to remain for a number of years. And I think even new generations and further generations are going to listen to what happened throughout these 7 to, I do not know how long is this going to last, but I think it's a very, very nice invention. Now we go to number 8.
Number 8 is the ImmuTouch. Now the ImmuTouch is like a smart watch. So imagine I've taken my watch off. Imagine you've got a smart watch and it's got one function. As soon as it feels you going towards your face, it rattles like that and it shocks you. So you then put your arm down. The idea is that so much infection that's on your fingers, once it goes to your eyes, it goes to your face, then it becomes live. Whereas if you keep it on your hands and wash your hands, it's much easier. So this was invention by 2 young guys, apparently. It's a watch that vibrates if you go anywhere near your face. Now, I don't know how that useful for you that would be. For me, I just wear a mask and it's much easier. I want a watch that tells me the time, but hey, call me old-fashioned. What's next?
So number 7 is the visor, that protective visor that they started having, and also the Face ID masks. I see these are really interesting. I mean, right now, I think that's a lot better protection for your face. If you have that visor, you're definitely not going to be touching your face. So I think that is number 7. And now we go to number 6. What do you have as number 6, Dave?
Number 6, we've got the hand-free door handle, which sounds like a bit of a mouthful, but this is a really cool object. Have you ever tried to get in the house while carrying shopping bags? And you use your elbows and you use your chin and you've got to carry the car keys, but you can't put it down because if you put it down, you've got to get all these bags and they're cutting into your hands. So you're going to find a way of doing it. Well, the biggest problem and the most germs anywhere are actually in a lift door. When you press the button on a lift, the lift button has got more germs than anywhere else apparently, but toilets have got to come kind of close to it because people open doors and close doors and don't wash their hands, and exception, you can see where this is going. So what this invention is, it allows you to open a door by not worrying about your hand, doing it all with your elbow, but it actually has a handle you can move with your elbow, which is really smart. Using the same kind of technology as using a fire door. When you push it open and you don't have to touch a handle or anything else, this allows you to put your arm down and it opens the door, which is fantastic as long as you've washed your arm. If your arm's covered in whatever it is, then you're back to square one again, but hopefully it'll be on your sleeves. So I think that's a great invention. That's number 6.
Love it. That is great. And our next one, which is going to be number 5, it's going to be the hospital sanitizing robots. And these ones, actually, they're not only operating in hospitals, but they're also operating in other places. I have actually seen them in malls. I have also seen videos, because I haven't been in an airport anywhere close. But it's very interesting how these robots are actually sanitizing the area. And this one is number 5. So now I think you're going to have a fun one, which has to do with the number of this episode, and that's the Quarantine Together dating app. So you tell us about it, Dave.
Yes and no, because here's the problem. I mean, it's episode 69, so we should be going shh, 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 and having a laugh about it. But here's the problem. The quarantine dating app, which basically is like Tinder for people who are apart. And I think I've not got one for obvious reasons. My wife wouldn't let me have one, but which I think is a great idea. But ultimately, it allows you to create a relationship with somebody who you've never met and you probably won't meet. So without actually trying it out, I don't know what the idea is. What makes it different from Tinder? You're swiping left, you're swiping right, or you're on your own with somebody swiping up and down. I don't know, if you know what I'm saying. So I'm not sure how this works. Have you ever used it, Ernesto? Have you been allowed to by your wife? Do you have a liberal kind of thing going on? So if you've used it and you've used the quarantine dating app, I mean, we know it's got remote stuff. I'm imagining that the relationship continues a little bit further than just, hi, how are you? Hi, how are you? Because otherwise you would have done it on Facebook or Instagram. I think there's probably some loving, visual loving going on. So tell us what it is. Otherwise, we're going to have to search for it. And if it comes up as a search on a search engine in my house, and my wife finds that I've been looking at it, I'm in the doo-doo. So if you can tell me, I can find out. Next up is number 3, and you can take this one, Ernesto.
Okay, so that's the fever detecting technology at a distance. And this is actually, I think for me, this is really cool that you get with a little gun and then they actually test what the temperature is. I mean, you know, this makes me think of this is something that I don't think it would have taken too long to actually discover, and they have never used it before. But, you know, I was just thinking, the luggage, you know, the handbag or the bag for luggage has been invented for God knows 2,000 years. And it took until 1974 to actually put wheels on that kind of thing. I think this is the same kind of invention. I mean, this technology could have been there for a long time, and we were still looking for that thing that you had to put inside of your mought. Why didn't they have it before?
In your ear. Up your
bum, yeah.
I think it was very bad, but yeah, I mean, go to it. Can you put this convenient thing up your ring piece while we just check to see the temperature? But here's the thing: how many times, and the weather in Houston is not too dissimilar to Dubai. The amount of times I've gone into a shopping mall or when I've gone to a hospital and they check your temperature and they go, "Oh, you're a little bit hot," and you're like, "Yeah, it's hot outside. I've been sweating in my car." And now I've got a mask on. Of course I'm going to be sweating. Can you stand to one side and I'll come back to you? I mean, like, don't you think I would have been coughing by now? Anyway, so it's a challenge for me. It really sort of winds me up. All right, number 2. For this one, I'm going to substitute in the drones that are being used to wipe the streets. Some of it's happening in Dubai. It's actually probably an equal one. I like the drones that were used to sweep the streets and to clean them while people were in lockdown. But I also want to add in another bit of technology, which for me was fantastic, which was the introduction of faces at sporting events. The way that sports have reinvented themselves to have all the fans watching on Zoom lenses. So you've got all these LEDs representing the fans, or you've got individual ones that people can buy that make all the noise that come through. So you've got an artificial but very effective way of watching WWE or watching NBA. And I think that's fantastic. So what's the number 1, Ernesto? What's the best invention for us during the lockdown?
Well, this one was not actually invented during the pandemic, but if it would not have been because of that, this world would have actually gone into full stop, and it would have been a big, big challenge, and that is Zoom. I think Zoom was a blessing in disguise for everybody, even though it's not my favorite technology. I do believe, yeah, it's not my favorite. I do believe that if it would not have been because of Zoom, it would have just been an absolute nightmare. And with that, we finish our new section, Great Inventions During the pandemic.
Easy.
Fantastic.
Easy.
Excellent. So with that in mind, we'll be doing the same thing every week. If you've got some suggestions for what we should feature in the top 10 list, then let us know. Otherwise, we'll dig deep, we'll do our research and bring you something fresh every single weekend. And also, by the way, when you're actually looking at the show, make sure that you subscribe, make sure you connect with us, follow us on social media, and share it with your friends. The more people that join our little gang, the more people can have fun with us. And then we become a big, happy family. And we are heading towards Christmas. If you want to get a card or a special greeting, you should start doing it now. Otherwise, you'll be on the naughty list, where me and Ernesto have been for quite many years. But it's okay over there. It's a bit naughty, but we kind of like it. So what's up next, Ernesto?
Well, we have just finished the Republican convention here, so now all the politics are aside, and of course that created a lot of interesting things. Let me just share with you one experience that happened to me in Facebook. You know that I don't have a horse in the race. I'm not going to be saying, well, you know, this one is better than the other or whatever. You can have your opinions, and I think that's just perfectly fair. We are not Americans, either one of us. But it is, you cannot help but observe what is there. And one big question came to my mind. I mean, what's the difference between patriotism and nationalism? And I think this is just a very important question, because one of the things that I posted, and it was just to, you know, poke the tiger in Facebook. I said, well, you know, I didn't really know that the United States had right now a monarch. Oh my goodness. I mean, that created a huge amount of people. Oh my goodness, this is not like this. This is a republic, blah, 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 blah. And I wasn't really doing it in that specific point in trying to get people upset or do anything like that. But one of the things that sorry?
Yes, you
No,
were trying
I
to get people.
No, I wasn't. I mean, it is very weird. I mean, if you actually think about it, if you think of what will happen in any country that has a monarchy, you will see the monarchs being in their palace, and of course, it would be the prince and the other prince and the princess and everybody actually just making sure that they understand. I mean, that's exactly how it felt for me as a foreigner to see what was happening on the Republican National Convention with all the flags back there and the whole thing. And this is exactly what I think is very, very interesting. What's the difference between patriotism and nationalism? That is a great question. If you know what the answer is, please make sure to let us know on the comments, because for me as a Mexican, I understand patriotism, for example, like you're seeing right now on the screen, every time that Mexico plays in the World Cup and all these crazy Mexicans celebrating like mad. Or if we think about in the Netherlands, it's exactly the same thing. I mean, that's what I think about patriotism. How about you, Dave? I mean, what do you think about patriotism?
Well, first of all, I'd like to point out that this is a very American conversation. This is about the elections where there's just two parties against each other, the Democrats and Republicans. In many other countries, there are several options, not every country, but there are several options, and also more support for each one. So it's very polarized in the US. I think that patriotism generally tends to be about the fact that you feel proud of your flag, you feel proud of your country, and you feel proud to be a citizen, whether you're expat like me and you're living abroad, or you're actually living in your country, and that's what you're proud of. Nationalism tends to have a different spin in it, because nationalism means generally that you like your country or love your country to the point where you hate other countries. That's the feeling I get from it. It might not be the right definition, but that's generally what it's seen like. And it's done because of the fact that so many people have made a point of saying, you're either this or you're that. Now, this is a generational thing, because when you look at the younger generation, because they're all connected to people on social media, they don't see color the same way. When you look at the fact that when it came to the Black Lives Matters marches, when you've got millennials and younger marching, you've got all rainbow colors of people all together saying, this is ridiculous. Why are we dealing with this still? So I think that it's very much an age thing at this moment in time, but it really depends on how people bring up their kids as to what they do next. You would hope that the kids are going to have their own way of doing stuff, but it really depends on how much of an establishment hangover there is with nationalism versus patriotism. I love it, as you say, when the sports are on, so you can get behind your favorite team. But at the same time, if your team gets knocked out, it's always fun to be behind another team or somebody else's team. I know lots of people who won't do that. As soon as their team's out, they have no interest in it. And football and sports tends to be like that, about polarizing people. So as for what people's definition is, I'd love to know. For me personally, I think that living abroad, you hang up your ability to just go, this is all I want. And if I was to choose a country, after 30 years of being in the United Arab Emirates, I'd probably choose I'd probably choose to be a Brit based in the UAE. I don't think I get a chance to be a UAE citizen because they won't let you have that. Not yet anyway, but that's a close second because I love the country and I love the way that I've been able to have successes here. I don't know how other people feel about their own country, because does that mean that if you disagree with the way your country is run by the leaders that you elected, you're being unpatriotic?
Yeah, that's a very good question.
Confused.
Or it's also the same thing as if you say, I mean, after September 11th, for example, if you were not having a flag outside of your house, or if you were not showing that you had the American flag with you, you were possibly seen as the enemy. I mean, it is a very, very interesting and touchy subject. And for that, we have this short video about an American football player that actually plays in Germany. Have a look.
Today, I want to talk about patriotism and the difference between Americans and Germans when it comes to being patriotic. I think this is a really interesting subject, and I've had some conversations with some of my German friends and teammates about it. But basically, I think for the most part, everyone sees a certain level of American patriotism, you know. American flags everywhere, American flag gear everywhere, superhero characters like Captain America, bumper stickers of American flags or sayings like proud to be an American, and it's pretty normal. You know, like we have an American flag flying outside of our house. Most of our neighbors have American flags flying outside of their house. It's a pretty normal thing to see. Whereas in Germany, it doesn't feel the same way. During the European Championship soccer tournament in 2016, I remember talking to one of my coaches with the Unicorns, and he was telling me that it was really weird for him to see German flags being hung outside of people's houses because it was during the tournament. So people were hanging German flags out and showing support for the German national team. And he told me that was really, really weird and almost uncomfortable for him to see this level of patriotism. And he told me that he thinks that the history with the World Wars has something to do with him being uncomfortable seeing all of these German flags everywhere. And after I had that conversation with my coach, I started to notice, yeah, there's not many German flags flying around in Germany, or, you know, German flag printed shirts or backpacks or products or anything like that. So I thought this was really interesting to see, basically the different levels of comfort between Americans and Germans when it comes to their flags. And of course, this is not even close to the only way of expressing patriotism, but I think it's very interesting the difference in level of comfort between Americans and Germans when it comes to having their country's flags be so visible and prominent.
Yeah, great video. So the conclusion I get from that is that America has a completely different view of what nationalism and patriotism is from the rest of the world, and the way that they, not the rest of the world complete, because I can't speak for everywhere, but certainly for the way that Europe sees itself. Being a Brit, we've just done the Brexit, so we've left Europe effectively, but about 50% of the people left. For many of us, we felt European anyway, and so many would choose that as their first choice rather than nationalism for their own country. But I think that the real challenges that America's facing right now are down to a couple of things. First of all, they've got such a huge landmass with so many things going on, and because they're such a successful country and have been for such a long time, they don't really need anything outside of their ecosystem from different countries. They can pretty much produce it all in America, or they could at least, certainly in terms of intellectual property, they used to have that edge. Secondly, you got that problem with the map. Years and years ago, hundreds of years ago, I think the Pope decided that he wanted to create a map that would allow people to travel around the world spreading Christianity. So he got in a guy whose expertise was to recreate a world map, but do it so it had straight lines, so shipping captains would not get lost. So he drew it all out of proportion to the actual countries as they were, so it had straight lines for people to follow. Now, the problem is that that's been adapted for generations in schools in America more than most places. I'm not seeing it outside of America, but it's got a real imbalance of what the size of the countries are. So you've got the Western countries as huge, you've got the African countries as tiny, and you've got places like Alaska and places like Greenland as being the same size as Africa. Whereas the truth is they're completely the wrong size. And I think that's given a really inflated and wrong size to education about the position of America in the world. Now, I'm not saying this to say bad things about Americans at all, but I think that the idea that America is best in the world, period, has been shown to be different, especially in response to the coronavirus. And I think that a lot of that is because it must be the best because it's the biggest. Yeah. No, it's not. So I would say those two things make a big difference. And I know that saying this will upset a lot of people, but if you look it up and you check on the real sizes of the maps, not the ones that people got taught, you'll see that there is a disparity between the two different sizes, and that has a lot to do with what people consider.
Yeah, for me, I think another very important thing is that for Europeans, patriotism, it's very, very different because of also, and this is why this video was very important, Germany. I mean, the Germans went through the really terrible period from 1933 until 1945. And for them, you know, that incredible craziness about nationalism gets them to think of the Nazi times. And that's why people are very, very careful. And I think for me, it's very important to make a difference between patriotism, because I feel very patriotic about the United States. I mean, the 4th of July, I am wearing the blue, white, and red. And I know the national anthem. I know the Pledge of Allegiance. I feel incredibly American. The same thing happens to me when I am in the Netherlands. I mean, I hear the Wilhelmus, which is the national anthem, and I feel very strong. I also lived in England, so whenever I hear the God Save the Queen, I also had this feeling of me being patriotic for England, which is a weird thing. So I think patriotic is something that has to carry, you know, integration, assimilation, that everybody gets together behind a country. But nationalism is exactly what you were mentioning a little bit earlier. We are the best. I mean, which is in Germany was the Deutschland über alles, Germany better than everyone else. And if you're not German, then you're crap. That is the kind of thing that I think should be seen very, very carefully. Don't you think?
I agree with you. I mean, I've lived in the United Arab Emirates for 30 years, and the success of this country is down to the incredible insights of the rulers who know that they grow as a country better by inviting in immigrants and expats to help grow with their expertise, their technology, their customs, their hospitality, to make the country something really special. And they know that. That's part of the business plan. So when it comes to nationalism, I feel pride when I see the UAE sending stuff into space. I feel pride when I see that Dubai's got the tallest building in the world. It's got the best events going on, all the rest of it. Yeah. And so you do feel it as an expat that this is our contribution. Yeah. It's not them and us as much as it's ours together. And I think that they do that better than most countries. They do have a very strict way of doing it, though. If you don't like it, you can leave. But if you do like it, welcome to our country. And the stories that are urban legends, but the true, of people who haven't been welcoming expats who get into real trouble in this country because that's not what it's meant to be. People to this country should be welcomed by everybody. And so there's very little fighting. I've not seen a single fight. In the years I've been here, I've not seen any trouble. I've only ever seen that people just do business, and they do successful business or unsuccessful business, but you've got a level playing field with very little crime at all, and I feel safe with my family here. There's got to be something about that.
I have the same thing with the UAE, and I think it's just great. But anyway, I think it's important that you let us know what you think about patriotism and also what is nationalism. And with that, Dave, I think it's a good idea if we keep on moving, because if not, we're going to have short time to all the stuff that we want to cover. And this one, I think it's really interesting. I love, I think must have been in the 90s when Michael Jackson released this song. And right now it has been re-released. And it is just a great idea, because that just makes me think that by revamping our old content, we will be able to have a lot of relevance right now. I mean, right now as a speaker, that's one of the things that I'm doing. I'm going through almost all of the videos that I have on my YouTube channel, and I am just revamping them and making look better. So what is this song that we're seeing right now here on screen, Dave, so that you can explain exactly how this concept of revamping your old stuff works?
It's making me feel really old. This song is They Don't Really Care About Us by Michael Jackson, and it came out as part of the History album in 1995. Can you believe that? 1995. It's what, going back 25 years since it came out? Oh my goodness. And so that song was all about the turmoil and the challenges that people have. But what I loved about it was the fact that it was a beautiful, beautiful album and a beautiful, beautiful song, but now it's been brought back again, and it's been attuned to supporting the challenges of dealing with the police, Black Lives Matter, the authorities, and it feels as powerful now, if not more, with all the footage added to the video as it did when it first came out. And you had, I think it was in Brazil, Michael Jackson singing it in the streets and everyone sort of clapping in time to music. It's amazing how timeless and fresh it feels, even though Michael's no longer with us.
Yeah, it's an awesome video, and I think it's just a great lesson that we can learn from Michael Jackson. So one of the things that I would like to recommend is go through some of your files that you have in your computer about videos that you have done in the past, about trainings that you have done in the past. And you know, right now that we are still in after a 7-month lockdown, I think it's a good idea to try looking around after all the stuff that you have done in the past and just give it a new life, because I think there's still a lot of incredible value that can be brought there. And that just takes me to the next point that we wanted to talk about. It is something really cool. I like to mention that there's already a name for the new generation. This is something that just happened. It's almost like breaking news, as breaking news of what happened on Monday, that the first UAE-Israel flight took off from Tel Aviv, flying to Abu Dhabi. So this is that kind of news that is actually happening right now, which is the new name for the new generation has already been established, and that is Generation Alpha. So we had Generation C, and right now we're getting into Generation Alpha. What do you think of that, Dave? We have a name for the new generation.
But who comes up with these names? Who decides the name that's going to be there? Was it decided by the kids themselves, or was it decided by some old part who decides to come up with it?
It's mainly historians, and they come up with a number of different names to try to put it on. That's why it takes a long time. Honestly, I do not know what the process is, but I think it's now nice that we have Generation Alpha. But I think before we talk about Generation Alpha, I think we need to talk about the Gen Z generation, which are our kids. I mean, your daughter, Maya, is Gen Z. My 2 kids are Gen Zs. And these guys are generations that you should not be messing with. Let's just have a look at this video so that you can understand a little bit better Generation Z. Have a look.
Gen Z entering the workforce, it's going to be a lot of change. For Gen Z, if I can log on and log in, I'm at work. So I think the physical office is really going to be challenged. Another thing that we know about this generation they're really going to challenge is the pace at which things get done. And everyone talks about work-life balance. You know, I got my work and my life, and work's from 9 to 5, and then your life, and how do we balance the two? What I love about Gen Z is they just don't think it works, and it really hasn't worked. What they go for is work-life blend, where work and life are 7 days a week, 24 hours a day.
By spring of their senior year, iGen teens are less likely, compared to previous generations, to have their driver's license, to work at a paid job, to go out on dates, to drink alcohol. And we've already seen this with millennials in young adulthood, taking longer to settle into careers, to marry, to have children, and so on. So the whole developmental trajectory is slowed down.
Gen Z is by far the most diverse generation ever, and we're also the most interconnected around the globe. And part of the reason is, you know, now with our generation, when something happens, the entire world finds out immediately through social media, through hashtags. We're always connected to each other, so we feel as though whether it happened in the same building or 1,000 miles away, it is immediately affecting us because we hear about it, and so we feel obligated to help and be a part of the situation, whether it's positive or negative.
They are also the one that values equality the most, whether we're talking about race or gender or sexual orientation or transgender issues. They're really much more open and focused on equality.
We really do not fear failure. So whether it be through political activation or entering new workplace or trying new things, we're willing to try something and fail.
And this is going to have a great impact on the other generations. For the rest of us who have been so cautious, that's going to really rub off to get us to step outside our box and maybe try some new things.
Great video. And I think what it drives us to understand is that the moral compass of young people, and for me being a really old fart, everyone's a young person, but of the Alpha generation and Generation Z, they understand issues a lot better than most, but they're interconnected. You've got a generation now where they are interconnected. They know each other, not everybody, but they have means of spreading relationships with each other. And they feel very comfortable on a global scale, just getting things done. If you look what happened there was mentioned with Donald Trump, with the rally that was meant to come straight after lockdown. So the TikTok generation, when you look at the power that they have and how interconnected they are, if you look at what they did with Trump's initial rally after lockdown, they decided that they wanted to prank it. So they sent the word out that we're going to buy all the tickets in advance and not go. Now that's incredible, and I think that the knockback on TikTok is a direct result of pranking Donald Trump by saying we're all going to go, we're going to buy millions of tickets, and then nobody turns up. That's a really powerful group of people who decide to champion K-pop, Asian pop, and that becomes huge as well. There's lots of reasons why you should be scared of them, but also the fact that they are looking at us and going, well, look at you guys, look what you've decided. That's rubbish. Now, if you consider as well the fact that their ability to connect has been growing from when they were born, but these last 7 months of lockdown is probably more like an incubator for them to super interconnect. Because it's not like we could say, right, go out and play in the garden, go out and play outside. They weren't allowed to. They had to stay in many places just because of a lockdown. So what do? You never get bored, you never get fidgety, go on your iPad. My daughter created a YouTube channel before we went into lockdown, and now she's got like 600, 700 subscribers. She's got videos that go out to maybe 40,000 people watching her videos. She's a monster online, and for most people our age of this, though, we're working on getting those kind of numbers after many years of striving towards it to pick up relationships like that. But the kids do it effortlessly. They all connect. And one of the things that's so powerful about that generation is they don't believe in ownership. They don't believe that this is mine. It's a collaborative generation. They want to start something, pass it to you, pass it around, and let's see what we can create by doing it all together. There's no me, me, me. So for instance, we protect them by saying that we want to make sure that you don't put your proper name online, and you don't, because there's predators and things out there. They just make up new names and they do it. And they're quite happy connecting with their aliases and creating great relationships with their aliases. My daughter has got a whole load of different cartoon signatures and ways of doing her name and watermarks that she puts on her videos. And it's not her, but it is her, because she's created this alternative identity. That's something at our age, we'd be happy just kicking a ball about and not even thinking about. So we've got kids now who, when it comes to schooling, I think they're already ahead of school before they even start, because the things that schools are going to teach them that they're going to need when they graduate, they're already doing before they get to their first set of exams.
I think it's something also very interesting how the whole thing on these 7 months that we have been in lockdown and semi-lockdown has gone also with generations. I mean, one of the things that we heard during the times of the lockdown was the Karen. And of course, the Karen is a direct attack on Generation X. And then, of course, I mean, the kids also calling the parents boomers. That's just a reflection of how they see us. I mean, they see us as we were saying, all farts. And that's why I have taken it as a mission of mine to be able to communicate to that level. I want to close that generational gap, because we need to start seeing them. I mean, it is a very revolutionary generation. I think it's a generation that is going to be fighting for several things. I mean, right now, if you see a lot of what has been happening with the Black Lives Matter, a lot of what is happening with all those things that they don't like, they are activists. They're activists, so they're going to be fighting for what they want. So the last thing you want is actually be messing around with them. My recommendation, and I'm sure that Dave is also exactly on the same page, is embrace them.
Embrace them, tell them everything, and ask forgiveness before they tell their friends exactly how stupid you've been. I think the thing that's made a difference for Ernesto is when we grew up, we had a world where the media controlled everything, but a small group of people controlled the media. So you could tell a nation what they should think by giving them programming, by giving them news. I mean, fake news is a reality now, but giving them news that they would buy into. And because everybody had the focus of watching TV on an evening to get the entertainment from that little goggle box. Remember when a TV was like a square and not just a single side or even a laptop? We would follow what we were given and we would eat it and sleep it. Nowadays, what's happened is every young person would never ever dream of watching TV. What somebody else has created the content and I've got to sit and watch it. Why would I do that? And instead what they have is the ability to create their own media and broadcast their own content if they want anybody else's. And this is a mindset that's different because the power that was in media, the power that was in the producers, the directors, the script writers has now gone, and they don't want to deal with the stuff that we liked. They are doing their own, like it or not.
Yeah. And just as a very last comment, what I think is just super crazy is that this is the in-between generation from the millennials to the generation alpha. Generation alpha are the kids from the millennials. Now, the millennials was also a crazy and to many ways, a bit of a disturbed generation. Now imagine how is Generation Alpha going to be, and we're going to be talking about that on the next episode of the Toilet Paper Diaries.
We can't take blame for everything, but we did start this going, so I guess we take some of it.
That is correct. And Dave, what do you think about Mr. Elon Musk and his crazy experiments?
Well, Elon Musk is the closest we get to Tony Stark. The guy is a genius, clearly. Sometimes he's a little bit off, in my opinion, with his social comments. But you can't argue with the guy sending things into space, creating electric cars, and he's got the ability to create flying cars as well as incredible amounts of artificial intelligence. His latest invention is just off the chart, and that's one of many. And this one is about the ability to deal with brain injury by reprogramming the brain by using chips as artificial intelligence. And this is just the beginning of the whole thing. Now, what I find fascinating as we look at this video in a moment is that I remember Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk gave a spin on what people should think of artificial intelligence. And Mark Zuckerberg was all in for it. Yeah, this is great. Artificial intelligence can only be good for humanity. Elon Musk had a different spin on it, whether that was because it was a sinister Elon Musk or just because he saw a different side to it. And he said you should be very careful that you don't end up giving too much power to artificial intelligence, because then why would it need us?
Yeah,
that's kind of chilling.
So what we're seeing right now here on screen is Elon Musk, basically with a bunch of pigs. And the whole experiment, actually, I think it's very interesting. He basically takes that chip that you're seeing right now on screen and gets implanted into the pig, and then the pig starts having different sorts of sensations and changing his behavior. Now, that might be by conspiracy theorists seen as a very, very bad thing. But in reality, if you think about it, this chip that they are actually inserting into the pig's brain can help quadriplegic people, people that had a stroke, people that had all sorts of different illnesses, and they can just get it reversed by using this chip. So the big question, Dave, is how do you think it's going to be accepted? I mean, is it going to be, oh my goodness, I mean, they're going to insert a chip in our brain and we're going to be manipulated and we're going to be tracked and we're going to be doing all these things? Because that's the thing that a lot of people get. Or is it a good thing that this technology is going there so that we can actually prosper and live longer? Thoughts?
There's two thoughts I have in it. First of all, there'll be a lot of people who are rightly worried about, they don't know what the technology is going to have. And so they want to make sure if it's changing people's minds, changing people's brains, and it's got artificial intelligence built in, has it got a bias? Has it got a back door? Has it got the challenges that if somebody programs you, you don't become a robot because they've got access to the way that you think?
Like the Manchurian candidate kind of thing.
Exactly that. Exactly that. The second thing is, when it comes to adopting it, I'm caught between the people who love their phones and the people who won't wear a mask. So there'll be a ton of people who will turn around and say, I'm not doing that. I'm never going to have this planted in me. It wasn't the way we were created as human beings thousands of years ago by the religious system that people believe in. So therefore, I'm never going to have one. But I just think that what you've got is a merging of science and spirituality to prove that there's a crossover. If you can change the way that people are by fixing a problem that they would have to deal with their entire life, like having a stroke or not being able to walk, or maybe having something that makes it more difficult for them to be maneuvering around, if you can readjust that, then that's great. Now, we've had a conversation many times about the fact that you can readjust people's DNA. You can go in, just like with a laptop, and reprogram people's DNA so they can be born without a problem. They can be born without any ailments or any challenges. And people say, well, that's not the way it was intended. Oh, come on. Are you really turning around to somebody and saying, we have this technology, but because of the way that we believe, you should suffer and you should have a more difficult life? I think it's genius. I think it's fantastic. If anything happens to me, I would happily have it. And I've got to trust the powers that be. But then again, you trust the powers that be not to be listening to this phone call. And we know they probably are. So what? Big deal. I'm all for it. Get it out to people and make lives better.
That is awesome. And just as our last topic, which I think is super, super interesting for everybody, which is into speaking, which is an expert, which is somebody that wants to get their branding there. And that is what we are doing right now. A signature show. Dave, we didn't know anything about web TV, or well, what we knew about web TV because we had a web TV show earlier. It was completely different to what we have right now. I mean, this is a live show. We are transmitting live.
It's a different world.
It's a completely different world.
I mean, kudos where it's due, Ernesto. You and I had a web TV show each. You had the amazing websites TV, and I had Turbocharge Your Brand TV. And we interviewed a lot of big names in the internet marketing and motivational world. And we had a TV show that was on the internet when the internet was still very innocent. And in those days, you could turn around and say—
10 years ago, 12 years ago.
If we'd say to people, 12 years, oh my goodness. If you want my newsletter, just sign up for it. And people go, oh, where do I put my name? Because in those days, there wasn't as much spam and people just sign up for it. So we were doing this some time ago. But what's happened, and it's interesting we're talking about the TikTok generation, everyone can now create their own content. So the danger in the way that the world is balanced is, why would you want to wait for some content to be given to you by a TV station? Why not just see your favorite guys doing stuff on YouTube? And so YouTube has become the most interesting way of creating content and getting it out to people. So there's so many new shows that are on there. I say new shows, that individuals creating their own broadcasting, but because of the nature of technology, we do this show ourselves. We don't have any help from anybody else. I do my own stuff. You do your own stuff. I've got a show I've been running for like weeks now. And I don't need anybody else's help. Once upon a time, you had to have a big camera crew, but if anyone was to look in this room, you can see that I've got cameras all the way around and a microphone, but it's all done at a budget from my own house. So I think that we've got a fascinating way that things are going to go. because people can create their own TV. And then it becomes really interesting because you can see what you want to see, not what people tell you you've got to see.
Yeah, well, we need to understand, and this is also something which I think is very interesting. During the speech from the two conventions, the Republican National Convention, Trump was speaking, and in the other one, Biden was speaking. The speech from Biden had almost 40% more viewers than the one from Trump. And the reason why that happens, and I am talking about YouTube only, I think also in the media, but I am talking about YouTube only. And the reason why this happened is because the Generation C and also the millennials, which is Generation Y, are more attuned with the world in YouTube. Right now, as you were mentioning, for us, I mean, I haven't had cable television for years now. I mean, possibly 5 or 6 years that we haven't had cable television. I am a very avid watcher of YouTube videos. I enjoy watching what I want to watch when I want to watch it. And I am not really too much of a Netflix person, because what happens is that you spend more time searching for whatever you like to watch than watching actually Netflix. So that's one of the reasons why I don't like it. And I see exactly the point on when this is going. So if we think about attracting a new generation and we want to really become relevant speakers and relevant experts, we definitely have to create a signature show. Now, possibly most of you have never heard of Dude Perfect. And I think what Dude Perfect has created is basically the model, the mold, the exact formula of how a signature show needs to work. Dave, you have seen Dude Perfect. You have seen exactly how they are working. Possibly you can break down the structure of what they have created for a number of millennials and Generation C, and then translate it for the old farts like us, which are actually also watching this show.
The way I see it is they've taken the template of a boy band but related it to a TV show. So it's not like America's Got Talent or Pop Idol. It's literally they've got 5 different guys with 5 different sets of things and skills that they really enjoy. They're all sportsmen, so it's kind of like a lad show, but that doesn't mean that it's not accessible to everybody else. And they all have their own stuff. So just like a boy band, everyone will like their own favorite member of the team, but they do a show that's got 4 very clear segments. And each of those segments is championed by one particular member of the group. And so Dude Perfect is probably like a boy band more than anything. But the thing is, if they were on TV, they would never be allowed to do it the way that they're doing it. Because somebody who's an executive would turn around and say, no, we've got the color scheme you've got has got to be this, the backdrop has got to be that. The fact that it looks polished but rough, and they're doing their own thing and having fun with it, is why when it gets released once a month, you end up with something crazy like in one day, 17 million people tuning in to see a show. In the real world, off YouTube and off social media, that's what you end up with if you're lucky for the final of Game of Thrones. So there's so many things going on. When you look at that whole world of Dude Perfect, and you look at something like Twitch, right now, 2.7 billion people are gamers. They don't care what's on TV. They don't even really care that much about the pandemic because they never go out. When they order food, it arrives as a pizza, which hopefully somebody will shove under the door. If not, they'll take a break, open the door, get the pizza, put it there, and carry on working. These guys have been on Twitch for such a long time that their heroes are on Twitch. In fact, if you look at the actual demographics of the people who are there, we're talking millennials and beyond, but we're also talking of Generation Alpha as well. And what's happened that's fascinating is if you've got 50 million people watching the finale of the Game of Thrones and everyone's talking about it, it's all over social media, for your average top player on Twitch in the gaming world, they get about 18 million viewers, much more than anybody else. And we don't know they exist because that's not our demographic. Yeah. And the whole ecosystem is growing so much. So you've got ex-porn stars who just play games. and they have money that's paid to them just to say hi. They're not naked, they're not doing anything rude, but they just look hot while playing games. So there's a whole ecosystem there that's almost got a glass wall around it, because anybody our age would never go near because it's completely inaccessible. But the guys in Dude Perfect are an example of the gaming world jumping out into this world and dominating.
Yeah. So what's the learning point here? The learning point is that the new normal for all speakers is that they need to come up with a signature show. The signature show is something that they're going to be having some banter, or they're going to be having several segments, or they're going to be following a specific format. If you do it once a week, that's perfect. All you're basically doing is communicating the personality. I mean, with this show that we have been doing already for a while, you can see Dave's personality, my personality. You get to connect with us like if we will be friends. And that's the whole point. I mean, we're keeping you company, whether we keep you company in a podcast, or we're keeping you company as right now watching the show. That's perfect. That's one element. And then the other element is going to be you creating some teaching content that you're going to start creating and also putting it there on your video. So that's exactly the importance that you need to understand. Start thinking like a virtual speaker and not only like a speaker as we used to be prior to the pandemic.
Because the business model now for speakers is not to go wham bam, thank you ma'am, turn up, speak at an event, get paid your check, go looking for another one-off. What you have to do is you have to position yourself as a consultant who does a keynote, but then is there to continue with the bottom line of what the keynote delivered in a taster form. They have to be that for all the clients that are hiring them in over a long period of time. And the best way to support that is a TV show, which will be your ecosystem, which will be your advertising. People can watch the show, know what you're about, and it's also a great way to deliver content to people, so then they know that because they follow you for a long time, they'd like to work with you. That's where speakers need to be. But so many of them just at the very best, they're doing selfie videos like this, or maybe having a Zoom call where it's not got a lot of technology behind it. And to be honest with you, because they're not really good at running TV shows, it's deathly boring and should stop immediately.
Yeah,
it doesn't.
Absolutely. And I think here the important thing is what Dave was mentioning about what Dude Perfect is doing. Once again, we're learning from the previous generation, or for the other generation, for the younger generation. And that's basically format everything, make sure that you try to see what they are doing it, and start formatting and creating your own signature show. Because we believe strongly, as we were mentioning last episode of the Toilet Paper Diaries, we were mentioning how important challenges are. I think a signature show is super important. And Dave, you know, I mean, I think this is a good time for us to give a shameless plug about what we do.
Well, it's always a pleasure to do so. My own particular areas, I teach people to be effective on stage, online and offline. And so my own signature show, as well as doing this with the Toilet Paper Diaries and Ernesto, is Speak on Stage. Goes out every single day on LinkedIn format and YouTube, and also onto Facebook and Twitter as well. And I teach people how to be effective as speakers and the mindset that goes behind driving that business as well.
That's correct. And I also teach speakers and experts how to become virtual speakers. That's what I'm doing right now. I help them brand themselves, and together, Dave and I could be very happy to help you put together your signature show. If you are interested, let us know. You can see either one of our information just down here or up here, either one. I'm not sure where it's going to be showing up right now. It's going to be something like that. And Dave, we are running out of time. Once again, can you believe it? 69. We have done now 69 episodes.
Fantastic. And what's next? But 69 episodes is kind of bonkers. I'll tell you what makes it even more crazy is we started off by doing every single day. So we got to 50 in the first 50 days. And now the last 4 months, we've been balancing the timing and changing and tweaking the formula And I think people will agree that the new format for the Toilet Paper Diaries is kind of chilled out, but interesting. We can still share new stuff with you, but we do it maybe with less intensity and more of a smile. And that kind of works for me and Esto. It's always a pleasure working with you. And as long as the world is still turning, we'll come out with some great stuff to share with everybody.
Absolutely. See you guys. See you next week on the next episode of the Toilet Paper